Today I want to talk about my birth story of my second baby. I've got my first birth story up on YouTube, but I want to talk about my second one because it's a completely different story than my first. So I went in not knowing if I could do it. Like, this is a natural birth. I had no epidural and I had no idea that I could do it. I want to talk about it. So it was the 1st of July 2025, so a while ago now. I was 39 weeks pregnant and 5 days. That morning I had been to playgroup and I was starting to get to the point where I was like, I just know that I'm going to be overdue. You know when you hit 37 weeks and technically you're full term and every single day you're like, it could be the day. Well, I was like that every day. And I got to 40 weeks of my first and I was induced because of growth issues, apparently, allegedly. Anyway, it was 35 weeks and 5 days. That morning I went to playgroup and I said to my friends, it could be any day now, but it's not going to be today. I just know it. And my friend said to me, nah, it's going to be today. Watch it be today. Well, she was right. Anyway, that evening it was 7 o'clock. I had just put my 20-month-old child to bed. I breastfed him to sleep just like every other night. I was on my bed. And then my waters went. And it was, as you would probably imagine, it's just like a gush of water that you cannot control. Like, you know when you do a wee, you can stop it? It's just like that. It's just like coming out. It's like when you have your period and you just feel the flow. That's what happened. For context, this pregnancy had been pretty easy. My first pregnancy, I had low PAP, so I had growth scans every 4 weeks, but generally it was a fine pregnancy. This pregnancy was a bit different. I had no growth scans, no issues like that, but I did have one episode of unexplained bleeding. I actually stopped recording I was making a series on every week in pregnancy, and I stopped because I had some bleeding and I just started to feel quite anxious. I also had anemia throughout this pregnancy, and to be honest, I just felt really ill most of the pregnancy. So my waters went and immediately I was like, I was really scared. Like, my heart was racing and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm technically in labour now that my waters have gone. And when your waters go, you're either going to go into active labour on your own or they're going to induce it, because if you have 24 hours to go into labour yourself, or they're going to induce you because of the risk of your waters going without going into labour, means that you're at risk of infection. So I knew that this was the start. I rang the hospital and they said, okay, come in and we'll just get your waters confirmed, make sure they're definitely gone. And I hadn't even packed my hospital bag. So at this point I'm running around. I had a few snacks that I had bought. I'm shoving everything into a bag, get a little suitcase, and then I'm like, okay, I need to go to hospital. My husband, my partner, he was getting my baby, my toddler, to sleep. So I would breastfeed him and then I'd give him to Dad, and Dad would cuddle him to sleep. So Luke was getting Harris to sleep and I had to go to the hospital. We've got one car and we can't leave our son at home. We have no family or friends near us, and I don't have any way to get to the hospital, because if I go to hospital in the car and go into labour, then Luke can't come and get me, he can't come and be there with me. So anyway, I'm looking on taxis, and I'm phoning up all these taxis, can you take me in? No one answered. I had no way of getting there. I was like, should I go to my neighbour? In the end, we waited an hour, and Luke took me. He woke Harris up and everyone just took me to the hospital, dropped me off, put him back to bed. They dropped me off at the hospital. I go in and I queue up to get examined. I'm in the waiting room in the triage, and there are 3 or 4 other mums, and it's a slow queue today. Normally it's fine, but it was about 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night at this point, and it was busy. No one was being seen. It was just, we were just waiting around. So I had waited about 2 hours to get seen. 2 hours where I was starting to contract at this point. When I had just arrived, I was getting some twinges, some period-like pains, a few contractions, but they were pretty sporadic. By the time I was there, it was ramping up. I was getting every 2 minutes on my contraction monitor. And by this point I had said to the receptionist, okay, my contractions are getting worse now. I think I am going into active labour. And so eventually I got seen. She did a vaginal examination, and at this point I texted Luke and I said, okay, can you come back? By this point his mum had driven the 2.5 hour drive so that she could look after Harris while he slept. Luke came over, my partner came with me, and I got examined, and she said that I was 3.5 centimetres. If you know, you need to be about 4 centimetres to be in active labour and to be admitted onto the birthing unit. So she said, you're not quite there, can you go for a walk? I go for a walk, I need the toilet. And I know that that's a good sign when you like flush everything out. So I have a bit of a humbling moment in the hospital toilets. I come back up and I'm like, okay, I asked for paracetamol by this point because it's getting a little bit sore. Every 2 minutes I'm up against the wall and I'm like this, breathing through my contraction. After about 20 minutes, I went back to that same midwife and I said, look, okay, my contractions are ramping up. I need to be admitted now. She didn't re-examine me, but she knew that because I was 3.5, she knew that I would be coming back pretty soon. So she just took one look at me and she said, okay, I'm just going to go clear a bed for you. Thank goodness I advocated for myself and said, please admit me, because I was the last person that the hospital admitted that night. And I'm so sorry for anyone else that didn't make it in. I was the last person. They said that if I didn't get into that room and come then, that they would have asked me to go to the West Cumberland Hospital, which is an hour and a half away. And if you know anything about Cumbria, which is where we live, windy roads, not good. I would have given birth in the car, 100%. By this point, I am in my own birthing room and I'm getting settled in. I put some music on, and between contractions I'm like fine, I'm chatting to the midwife and I'm trying to get her humble opinion. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this with just gas and air. Like I also asked the midwife for an epidural because last time with my first pregnancy I got the epidural when I was pretty far on, and I had an induction, very intense, very painful. I had asked for an epidural too late on. Like I was really struggling. I had every painkiller under the sun. I was everything that you can get, I had ticked it off. I did not care. I was in so much pain. I was struggling. And so I knew that I didn't want to be in a situation where it was too much and I couldn't get the epidural. So I asked my midwife to put me on the list just in case, because I didn't want to be desperate and not get it. She did say that the hospital was really busy. They had a few emergency sections and things like that. So if I did get it, it would be quite late on again. So I said, just get me in, just in case. I tried to go for as long as I could without anything, without any gas and air, anything. And eventually, I started to need my gas and air, like I was struggling to breathe through. I found that gas and air, it really helped me to breathe through, to breathe in, and then halfway through, stop breathing in. So you're kind of woozy, and then you just focus on your breathing to just cope. I was admitted into my room at about midnight, 1 a.m, something like that. By 1:30, I could not speak through my contractions. Like I was on my gas and air breathing. That's a marker that you are very much in it. By about 2 o'clock, 2:15, I remembered that I had a TENS machine. I had a hospital bag in my hospital bag that I had from my last birth. I had a TENS machine and little sticky pads. I completely forgot about it. And at this point I said, oh my gosh, I've got a TENS machine. That really helped with my last birth. Put that on, and every time I knew that a contraction was going to come, because they were so regular, every 2 minutes bang on, or every 90 seconds, I would put it on just before I knew a contraction was going to come, because it kind of builds up your pain receptors to block them. So I put it on, and then by the time that the TENS machine was like reaching its intensity, my contraction was just sort of reaching its intensity too. I'd also have my birthing cone, which I just squeezed. So the only tension that I allowed in my body was in my hand to squeeze the birthing cone. If you've done hypnobirthing, which I've done, actually really helped this time round. My first birth did not help. I was way too far gone. But this time I was prepared and I knew how to breathe through it. And as I say, I let go of all tension in my body, squeezed the comb and just breathed. I stood up the entire time. Now everyone says that if you sit down it slows birth down. It does. And if you stand up, it's going to speed it up, which is good because I just wanted it to be over and done with. It's so tiring. I honestly think that made such a big difference. By about 2:45, I told my midwife like I needed the toilet again. I felt a lot of pressure down low, and I know that's a good sign. If you've been on like birth TikTok, you know all about this. If you need to poo, you're going to be giving birth soon, and that made me feel scared, but it's good. It's called the transition. You're at the finish line, you're 10 centimeters dilated, baby's gonna come out. I had asked my midwife, at this point I asked my midwife, can I go in the birthing pool? Is that a good idea? What's your unbiased opinion? because I thought the idea of a birthing pool sounds quite nice, and, you know, dim lights and all that. She said that she could, but when they're in the pool, you would have to take my TENS machine off, and she also couldn't apply counter pressure, at least so obviously. So when you're above ground, they can see exactly where the tension is, and basically hold your perineum so that you try and minimise ripping. And she said that she couldn't really do that as much in the pool. So that for me was the decision made. I was going to stay on top because the idea of ripping and having like a lot of, you know, like a 4th degree tear was terrifying, or having to get an epidural, an episiotomy, no. So counter pressure, yes please. That was my decision made. At this point, I was pushing. It was 3 a.m. and I think it took me about 15 minutes to get the baby out. It was incredibly intense. It wasn't even like painful in the way that you would think it's painful. It's just so intense. Your whole body is like, it feels like it's expelling something, because it is. I had to just push. It's just what you start doing. I was worried about the ring of fire. Everyone said that when you start to crown, the baby's head starts to come out, it's burning. And I was waiting for that. I didn't even feel it. I feel like it was just so intense, the whole thing. And like you feel the head coming out and you feel yourself stretching. I don't know. I didn't even think about it. I didn't distinguish it. I was worried about ripping, but when you're in the moment, that's the last thing you're thinking about. But I do know that when you are pushing, it's really important to not push too fast and to regulate it, because if you push too fast, then you can rip. So I was just trying to stay calm while pushing out a baby as much as I could. At this point, I was birthing her head. And that is the hardest bit. Once you get over the head, you can envision, if you've ever watched One Born Every Minute, you've seen babies just dangling out. That terrifies me. I'm like, surely they're suffocating. I know they're not, because they've still got the umbilical cord on, but the idea of a baby hanging out of me is terrifying. So by the point her head was birthed, I was like, okay, great, just push her out. One swoop and she was out. And I had just given birth with just gas and air. And it was incredible. It was incredible. For me, it was a very, very spiritual experience. When I was pushing her and her head out for me, I was basically on the fence about religion. I'd been going to church a little bit because I felt like I should. And birthing the child out, I was like, this is real. I was like, Jesus Christ. I literally, when I was birthing her, I said, thank you, Jesus Christ. And that was me. And now I'm Christian. So that kind of tells you how intense and how spiritually profound I found it, how amazing I found the experience of a natural birth. 10 out of 10, will do it again. But anyway, let's talk after birth. Luke cut the cord and we had a fairly calm 3rd stage and after birth. Delivered the placenta. I think, from what I can remember, I think the midwife sort of helped me pulled it out basically. It wasn't painful, but my contractions were still going. They just weren't anywhere near as intense. When you push a baby out, placenta's nothing. It just happens. I had a 2nd degree tear into the perineal muscles, but didn't go any lower than that, so it's all healed up fine. But I did have to get stitches. I basically said to her, do I have to get stitches? Because I do not want, like, when you've just pushed out a baby, the last thing that you want is leaving your legs open when you've got a baby and you've got to get stitched up. It's just not what you want. You're like, leave me alone. I've just done, especially when it's a natural birth and you still feel everything hurts. Leave me alone, please. But anyway, she said she needed to do it, so I let her do it. They inject the, like lidocaine, the numbing agent. It really stings. That was actually probably one of the worst bits, was that. And at the same time, they were putting a cannula in, because she said that I had lost quite a lot of blood. I think she said that I'd lost about 900 mil. I don't know if that's a lot, just by speaking. But she said that she wanted to cannulate me just in case I needed to get a blood transfusion. I didn't get one. They just cannulated me just because. And they took about 4, maybe 5 attempts to get the cannula in. They had to get the anaesthetist in, because I am notoriously bad for getting cannulas in. And honestly, that was probably the worst part of the whole experience, was the cannula. Awful. In my first birth, they cannulated me because I got the epidural, and again they tried about 3 times, and it was sticking in the side of my hand, and it was so sore the whole time. That was the worst part. Anyway, while they stitched me and while I just got stabbed and stabbed and stabbed, Luke did skin to skin because I really wanted skin to skin, but I just couldn't. When you've got someone stitching up downstairs and you feel it all, and you've got someone stabbing you in your hand, well, both hands actually, 2 hands at once, and downstairs, I just couldn't enjoy breastfeeding and skin to skin. So Luke had the golden hour. I didn't. Once everyone sort of left, and once I was all stitched up and fine, I did breastfeed her. That was fine. I was still breastfeeding my toddler at the time, he's 20 months old, and I wanted to keep breastfeeding him so that latching would be easy, because when I had my first, latching was incredibly difficult and I couldn't do it, and I had to wear nipple shields. That was the only way I managed to do it, and it messed up my supply, got mastitis, it was a whole thing. So I wanted to make sure that it would be easy as possible, and it was fine. Luke went home at about 7 a.m. because we've got a toddler at home, and he was not happy to be without us. He's never been away from us, and even still, he's 2.5. So he left at about 7, and I stayed on my own with my baby. And it's when you've got a toddler and then you have a baby, I'm like, what do I do with it? Like, what do I do with a little, like, tiny fragile thing? How do I change her nappies? It was quite scary, just being alone, especially, like, it's such an experience giving birth, like, to have to then look after a baby. And this is me talking like I didn't have a C-section, I had it pretty easy. What is my toddler doing? Oh, he's just got a new buggy board. Oh, it looks pretty good. Anyway, yeah, it's pretty intense, just all of a sudden being left alone with baby. And by 2 o'clock that same day, I was discharged. We left at about 2:30, went straight to McDonald's, and see, when I said at the beginning that my friend said, you're going to give birth today, I saw her in McDonald's. She was like, oh, hey, how you doing? And she didn't notice that I had a baby in my car seat in my hand. She was like, oh, hi, nice to see you. You having a McDonald's? And then she looked down and she's like, I was right. So if you're watching this, Diane, that was you. So anyway, what is the point of my birth story? I went into this birth really anxious because my first birth, I enjoyed it because, I mean, it's an amazing experience giving birth to a baby, but it wasn't smooth sailing. It was not my plan A birth story the first time. It was a lot of intervention, getting the diaper getting induced, not being able to breastfeed, and having all the pain relief. It wasn't ideal, but I liked it. So I went into this feeling really worried and scared about whether I could have a natural birth. And I was weighing in my mind, being like, should I just get an induction? At least I know what to expect. Will I be able to push through the intensities of childbirth and a natural labour? I found it incredibly empowering, spiritual even. And I think that it showed me that I am so much more capable than what I realised. And you are too. If you're someone that's pregnant, wants to be pregnant, whatever, your body is going to do its thing because it knows how to do it. We are designed to do this. You can do it without pain relief. It's incredibly intense, and I think the more prepared you are, the better you'll be. If you have things like birth combs and TENS machine, someone there that also knows what you're going through, so they can recognise that when you're in active labour, when you're in transition, what to say, counter pressure, massaging your back, these things will really help you. If you need to get your pain relief, go for it. Like, absolutely. I'm a big advocate that, like, put yourself down on the list for an epidural. But I found that with the epidural, I've got back pain even still, 2.5 years down the line. So for me, I really didn't want to get the epidural. And I loved being able to feel, sorry for my camera wobbling there. I love being able to feel the beauty of giving birth naturally. It was amazing. Completely changed birth and pregnancy for me. I know that when we have another baby, hopefully, that I can do it, and I don't know if I'll go for a home birth, but I definitely will be doing it with gas and air next time. And I know that if you want to, you can do it too. But I will say, be prepared, have a few different birth plans, and go with the flow, and just be prepared for all outcomes. Like, know all of your options, advocate for yourself. And I hope this video has helped. If you have any other questions, please do let me know below. Happy to make more videos, and I'll see you for another video. See you later.